One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai.
And I'm Maya.
And this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter. Dijen Babu is restless. He's sitting in a boarding house room in Serampore, the Panthi boarding house where Mukunda lives, and his mind is churning. Atheistic doubts, skepticism about the whole spiritual path. But underneath all that intellectual armor, there's a question that won't leave him alone. He says it himself. May not untapped soul possibilities exist? Is man not missing his real destiny if he fails to explore them? That's not casual curiosity. That's a man who can feel something missing but doesn't know what it is.
Chapter 19 and 20. We're covering them together today because they're both quite short in the book, and they flow as one continuous story. The first is about Sri Yukteswar appearing across cities. The second is about a Kashmir trip that falls apart in the most spectacular way. They're connected by a single thread, the Guru's invisible reach, his ability to act across distance, through circumstance, through other people, to protect the people he loves.
So Dijen, Yogananda describes this hunger in him beautifully. He writes, "The trivial preoccupations of daily life are not enough for man. Wisdom, too, is a native hunger." That line gets me, because it's saying that the desire for meaning isn't a luxury or an add-on to human life. It's as fundamental as the desire for food. You can ignore it, but it doesn't go away. It just sits there, starving, until you finally feed it.
And Mukunda sees this in his friend, so he does something simple. He invites Dijen to meet Sri Yukteswar. No sales pitch, no arguments about philosophy or theology, just come and sit with the master. And the moment Dijen enters Sri Yukteswar's presence, something shifts. The turbulence quiets. There's a peace in the air you can't manufacture. The book says, "In Master's presence, my friend received such spiritual peace that he was soon a constant visitor." And then Yogananda adds something I find very moving. He said that in Sri Yukteswar's words, Dijen found an incentive to those attempts, first painful, then effortlessly liberating, to locate a realer self within his bosom than the humiliating ego of a temporary birth.
That's such a precise description of the spiritual search. First painful, then effortlessly liberating. It's not that the effort stops, it's that the effort stops feeling like effort once you've broken through the initial resistance.
Right.
So Dijen starts showing up regularly. Both he and Mukunda are studying at Serampore College, pursuing their bachelor's degrees, and as soon as classes end, they walk together to the ashram. And they'd often find Sri Yukteswar on his second-floor balcony, waiting for them, welcoming their approach with a smile. It's such a simple image, but there's something about being seen, being expected, being welcomed that makes it powerful.
And then one afternoon they arrive, and Kanai, the young hermitage resident, meets them with disappointing news. Master is not here. He was summoned to Calcutta by an urgent note. Can't say when he'll be back. They're both deflated. But the next day, a postcard arrives from Sri Yukteswar himself. "I shall leave Calcutta Wednesday morning. You and Dijen meet the 9 o'clock train at Serampore Station."
Very specific. Clear, written instruction. A postcard you can hold in your hand. The master's coming back on the 9 o'clock train on Wednesday. Plans are set. Everyone knows what to do. And then Wednesday morning arrives, 8:30. Mukunda is sitting in his room, and a telepathic message flashes into his consciousness, insistently, unmistakably. The master's presence reaches him across the distance. "I am delayed. Don't meet the 9 o'clock train."
And Mukunda immediately tells Dijen, "Wait, the master just sent me a message. He's delayed." And Dijen scoffs. "You and your intuition. I prefer to trust Master's written word. He's being rational, you know. He's got a postcard, it says 9 o'clock. Why would he ignore a physical instruction for something internal that only Mukunda can perceive?"
I mean, from Dijen's perspective, Mukunda sounds completely flaky. You've got a physical postcard with written instructions from the master himself, and you're going to override that based on a feeling, based on something invisible that only you can hear? So Dijen leaves, muttering angrily, slamming the door behind him, and Mukunda just shrugs his shoulders, sits down, and stays behind.
And then something extraordinary happens. Mukunda is alone in the room, and because the room is rather dark, he moves near to the window overlooking the street, just to get better light. And the sunlight suddenly increases. Not gradually, intensely, like the light is being turned up from behind reality itself. The iron-barred window completely vanishes, and against this dazzling background, the figure of Sri Yukteswar appears, fully materialized, not a phantom, not a ghost or a vision. The book is very careful about this, the clearly materialized figure of Sri Yukteswar.
Hold on, the iron bars vanish? The physical window disappears?
Completely. The entire material structure dissolves in this overwhelming light, and in its place stands the master. Yogananda writes that he was bewildered to the point of shock. He rises from his chair, kneels before the figure, and performs his customary greeting, touching the master's feet. And here's the detail that changes everything. He feels the gritty surface of the rope-soled shoes. These are shoes he recognizes. Orange-dyed canvas soled with rope. He feels the pressure of the master's toes inside them, the texture of the ochre swami cloth brushing against him. This isn't a hallucination. He's having a physical, sensory experience that his mind cannot dismiss. And Sri Yukteswar's voice is calm, entirely normal. I was pleased that you got my telepathic message. I have now finished my business in Calcutta and shall arrive in Serampore by the 10 o'clock train. And then he explains, this is not an apparition, but my flesh and blood form. I have been divinely commanded to give you this experience, rare to achieve on Earth.
Divinely commanded. Not showing off, not proving a point for ego. There's a divine purpose. And then the master gives Mukunda a very specific prediction. He says, meet me at the station. You and Dijen will see me coming towards you, dressed as I am now. I shall be preceded by a fellow passenger, a little boy carrying a silver jug. So specific that later, when it happens exactly that way, nobody can dismiss it as coincidence.
And then the master places both hands on Mukunda's head and gives a murmured blessing. And as he concludes with the words Taba Asi, which is Bengali meaning, then I come, there's a peculiar rumbling sound. The master's body begins to dissolve within the piercing light. First his feet and legs vanish, then his torso, then his head, like a scroll being rolled up. And to the very last moment, Mukunda can feel the master's fingers resting lightly on his hair. And then he's gone. Just the barred window and pale sunlight.
Dijen comes back through the door, disappointed. Master was not on the 9 o'clock train, nor even the 9:30. And Mukunda says, come then, I know he will arrive at 10 o'clock. He drags Dijen towards the station. The train is already pulling in. And Mukunda exclaims, the whole train is filled with the light of Master's aura. And Dijen laughs mockingly. You dream so?
But Mukunda tells Dijen exactly what he's about to see. The master in these specific clothes, preceded by a small boy carrying a silver jug. And as he finishes the description, Sri Yukteswar comes into view, wearing the exact same clothes, walking slowly in the wake of a small boy carrying a silver jug. Exactly as predicted, down to every detail.
And Yogananda describes this wave of cold fear passing through him. He writes that he felt the materialistic 20th century world slipping from him. He's thinking of Jesus appearing before Peter on the sea. The parallels are unmistakable. And then the master reaches the spot where they're standing speechlessly rooted and smiles at Dijen. And he says, I sent you a message too, but you were unable to grasp it. The telepathic message. Dijen's rational mind, his insistence on written instructions, his very intelligence, it all closed him off to the subtle transmission. The guru sent the same message to both students. One received it, one couldn't.
And then there's this great moment where they're walking back from the station towards Serampore College. Dijen halts in the street, indignation streaming from his every pore. He confronts Mukunda. So, Master sent me a message, yet you concealed it. I demand an explanation. And Mukunda fires back. Can I help it if your mental mirror oscillates with such restlessness that you cannot register the ruse instructions? The anger vanishes from Dijen's face immediately. He says ruefully, I see what you mean, but please explain how you could know about the child with the jug.
And by the time Mukunda finishes explaining the full story of the materialization that morning, they've reached the college. And Dijen says something remarkable. The account I have just heard of our guru's powers makes me feel that any university in the world is just a kindergarten.
Complete reversal. The man who trusted written instruction over intuition now understands that his entire education, all his intellectual training, is just the beginning. There are realities, powers, dimensions of consciousness that universities can't teach. And now Chapter 20, Kashmir. Mukunda's been trying to get there for years. His father has given him money and train passes. Last year and the year before, the master refused, but this year, surely things will be different. He shows Sri Yukteswar the passes, the money, and the master smiles. I would like to go, we shall see.
Which is absolutely not a yes, but Mukunda takes it as one. He invites friends, Rajendra, Jotin Adi, Kanai. The date is set for Monday departure, and then Monday morning he arrives at the hermitage with his luggage, and Rajendra meets him at the door. Master is at walking. He has refused to go.
And Mukunda is equally grieved and stubborn. He decides he's going anyway. Here's the thing. This is the third year in a row he's tried to go to Kashmir. His father has laughed at him each time, saying, at the last moment, Sri Yukteswarji refuses to go. He's not giving his father a third chance to ridicule his chimerical plans. He tells Rajendra, come, the rest of us will go anyhow. He'll find a servant to manage the luggage. He thinks of Bahari, a former family servant who was desperate to see Kashmir.
But on his way to find Bahari, he runs into Sri Yukteswar in front of the Christian church near the Serampore courthouse. The master's face is unsmiling. Where are you going? Mukunda explains his plan. He's going to find Bahari, a former family servant who was so anxious to see Kashmir the year before that he offered to serve without pay. And Sri Yukteswar says calmly, I remember. Nevertheless, I don't think Bahari will be willing to go. Mukunda is exasperated. He is just eagerly waiting for this opportunity. The guru silently resumes his walk.
And Mukunda reaches the schoolmaster's house where Bahari works. Bahari greets him in the courtyard with genuine warmth, friendly, happy to see him. But the instant Mukunda mentions Kashmir, the friendliness vanishes, abruptly, completely, like a light switching off. Bahari murmurs an apology to Mukunda, then turns to his employer's house and disappears inside. Mukunda waits half an hour, nervously telling himself Bahari must be packing. Finally, he knocks at the door. A man informs him, with a slight smile hovering about his lips, Bahari left by the back stairs about 30 minutes ago.
He literally fled out the back door. A man who begged to go to Kashmir the year before ran away the moment it was offered. And when Mukunda passes the Christian church again, there's Sri Yukteswar walking toward him. Without waiting for a single word of report, the master says, "So Bahari would not go. Now what are your plans?" He already knows every detail. And Mukunda, feeling like a rackle child who is determined to defy his masterful father, says he'll ask his uncle Sarada Ghosh, a government attorney, for his servant Lal Dari.
And the master says with a chuckle, "See your uncle if you want to, but I hardly think you will enjoy the visit." And Mukunda enters the Serampore courthouse. Uncle Sarada welcomes him affectionately. "I am happy for you, Mukunda. Is there anything I can do to make your journey more comfortable?" The kindest words he's heard all day. And then Mukunda asks, "Dear uncle, could you possibly spare me your servant, Lal Dari?" And the effect is like an earthquake. Uncle Sarada jumps so violently his chair overturns. Papers fly off his desk in every direction. His pipe, a long coconut-stemmed hubble-bubble, crashes to the floor with a tremendous clatter. "You selfish young man, what a preposterous idea. Who will look after me if you take my servant on one of your pleasure jaunts?"
The transformation is instantaneous and total, from affectionate uncle to volcanic rage in the space of one sentence. And Mukunda retreats from the courthouse, his exit, as Yogananda puts it, more alacritus than dignified. And now the conviction is growing in him that some sufficient, if exceedingly mysterious motive is behind the master's attitude. Everything today has been devoted to incomprehensibility. He goes back to the hermitage, and the master says gently, "Wouldn't you like to stay a while longer with me?" And Mukunda finally stops fighting. "Sir, I don't care to go without you." His friends leave with the luggage. Mukunda and Kanai sit quietly at the guru's feet in silence. Half an hour passes. Then the master rises and says, "Kanai, please serve Mukunda's food. His train leaves soon." Wait, his train leaves soon. He just said he wasn't going.
And as Mukunda gets up, he staggers. Nausea, a ghastly churning in his stomach, stabbing pain so intense he can barely think. Asiatic cholera. He collapses toward his guru. "Master, I surrender my life to you. I believe my life is ebbing."
And the master picks up his head gently and puts it on his lap, and he strokes Mukunda's forehead with angelic tenderness. He says, "You see now what would have happened if you were at the station with your friends. I had to look after you in this strange way because you chose to doubt my judgment."
The master knew. He saw the cholera coming. He couldn't just tell Mukunda, "You'll get cholera if you leave," because Mukunda's faith wasn't strong enough to take that at face value. So the guru worked through circumstances, through Bahari's sudden refusal, through the uncle's explosive rejection, through every apparent obstacle, all orchestrated so invisibly that everyone would think it was natural.
But it was all arranged. The master's intervention was too subtle to be suspected. A casual observer would have thought the day's events were completely ordinary. Bihari happened to be unwilling. The uncle happened to explode. But there was nothing accidental about any of it. The guru was protecting Mukunda from something he couldn't yet see.
And then the healing. Mukunda cries out, "Master, only you can heal me. I am too far gone for any doctor." And Sri Yukteswar says, "Child, you are protected by the divine mercy. Don't worry about the doctor. He will not find you in this state. You are already healed." And with those words, the excruciating suffering leaves him, just gone. He sits up feebly. A doctor arrives, examines him carefully, takes specimens for laboratory tests.
And the next morning, the doctor rushes back and finds Mukunda sitting up, smiling, chatting as though nothing had happened. The doctor can hardly believe it. He says, "I hardly expected to find you alive after I had discovered from the specimens that your disease was Asiatic cholera. You are fortunate, young man, to have a guru with divine healing powers. I am convinced of it."
And then Rajendra and Adi appear at the door, confused and a little resentful because they expected Mukunda at the Calcutta train the day before. But when they see him and hear what happened, resentment turns to sympathy. And Mukunda can't help laughing as his friends place the luggage back in the same corner it had occupied yesterday. He quotes an old saying, "There was a ship that went to Spain. When it arrived, it came back again." Everything returned to where it started, but nothing is the same. Because now Mukunda knows. The guru's refusal was protection. The obstacles weren't obstacles. They were the master's invisible hand, working through the world, through other people's choices, to keep his disciples safe.
Trust in the guru's guidance, even when it makes no sense, even when it looks like refusal, is the only real safety.
And the teaching from both these chapters is the same, isn't it? The guru communicates not just through words, but through presence, through arranging circumstances, through appearing across cities, through blocking trips that would lead to disaster, through every invisible act of love disguised as inconvenience.
Even though underneath it, it's total love, the master is willing to appear harsh, uncooperative, mysterious, all in order to protect you from something you can't see yet. That's the guru-disciple bond at its deepest. Not a relationship based on obedience or authority, a relationship based on a consciousness that sees further than yours and loves you enough to intervene.
And I think the most beautiful moment in the whole chapter is the very end, when Mukunda takes his guru's hand and says, "Guruji, from my 12th year on, I have made many unsuccessful attempts to reach the Himalayas. I am finally convinced that without your blessings, the goddess Parvati will not receive me." He finally understands. The mountains were never the obstacle. His own resistance to the guru's timing was, and now he's ready to wait until the guru says it's time.
3 years of pushing, and the lesson was always the same. Stop forcing. Trust that the one who sees further than you isn't withholding something, he's protecting something.
Next time, they finally make that Kashmir trip. Sri Yukteswar agrees. 2 days after the cholera, he simply says, "You are strong enough now to travel." And what unfolds in those mountains is going to cost the master something he can never get back, his own body's health, sacrificed willingly, silently, to burn his disciples' karma in the fire of his own fever.
It's the most profound demonstration of love in the entire book. A strawberry prophecy that reaches 20 years into the future, a paradise of lotus lakes and floating gardens, and a guru who gives his body so his students can be free. See you next time.